For the third time this year, parts of Queensland have gone into a 3-day snap lockdown. It was sparked by an unvaccinated receptionist at a Brisbane hospital who tested positive for the virus and travelled to North Queensland while infectious in the community for 10 days. State political reporter Rachel Rieger begins our coverage.
Millions of Queenslanders masked up this morning as new restrictions came into force, but worse was to come.
The risk is real and we need to act quickly, we need to go hard, we need to go fast.
The lockdown was sparked by 2 new cases of community transmission. One case is a miner from Ipswich who tested positive to the Delta strain after returning from a Northern Territory mine. All 170 FIFO workers who have returned from the site are in quarantine. 112 have so far tested negative.
We're not out of the risky time yet with all of those other miners.
The main case of concern is a 19-year-old casual receptionist from Brisbane's Prince Charles Hospital who worked just outside the COVID ward. She wasn't vaccinated by Queensland Health. The Premier has ordered an investigation.
I am absolutely furious about this. We need to make sure that we are getting our population vaccinated.
The woman from Sandgate was infectious in the community for 10 days from Saturday, June 19. She worked at the hospital early last week, then travelled to Townsville and Magnetic Island with her family before returning to Brisbane on Sunday.
2 of her family members who live in the same household are unwell, so we're urgently testing them, of course, and one of her close friends is unwell, so we're urgently testing them.
We need people to take this seriously. If you are unwell at all, any symptoms, you must get tested.
Now 11 local government areas in the southeast and Townsville City, Magnetic Island and Palm Island are in lockdown until 6 p.m. Friday. You're only allowed to leave home to buy essentials like groceries or medication, to work or study if you can't from home, to exercise in your local area and to receive health care or provide care.
I know this is going to be tough for a lot of families. I apologise for that.
Further restrictions are also in place. Cafes, pubs and restaurants can only open for takeaway or home delivery. Only 2 visitors are allowed in your home. Funerals are capped at 20 mourners and weddings can only have 10 people. Masks must be worn when leaving the house and no visitors are allowed at aged care, prisons, hospitals and disability service providers.
Upset, but at the same time I understand, but it doesn't make it any easier for small business.
Business owners say the lack of financial support makes this lockdown tougher.
We did get some of the like JobKeeper and that sort of thing last year, but there's nothing out there this year.
Supermarket shelves for certain essential items once again cleaned out. The Queensland Government is concerned about the large volume of overseas travellers coming into the state. The Premier is urging the Prime Minister to lower the cap on international arrivals, with about 150 coming into the state each day.
Hotel quarantine is just not the answer. We need a massive reduction in overseas arrivals because the overseas arrivals are bringing in these contagious strains.
Our international borders are supposed to be closed, but every week thousands of people are allowed to travel.
But for now, it's this traveller within the state that has Queensland on a knife edge.
Across now to state political reporter Rachel Rieger. And Rachel, this must be the worst case scenario for health authorities.
Yes, Matt, it certainly is. So we heard late this afternoon that 19-year-old receptionist from the Prince Charles Hospital has the highly infectious Delta strain. So this is the variant that's caused Sydney's Bondi cluster, which very quickly grew to 130 people and has travelled across the country. So it is a concern because it spread so quickly from fleeting contact. Now, health authorities have tested and they're still awaiting the results of 2 family members and a close friend of the 19-year-old who has fallen sick. So, Matt, tonight it's still very much an unknown how far this virus has spread.
All right, Rachel, thank you. Rachel Rieger, state political reporter there. North Queensland residents are on high alert tonight after the first community case on their patch in more than a year. The woman who travelled from Brisbane spent 3 days holidaying on Magnetic Island, a particularly vulnerable community due to its ageing population.
A trip cut short for tourists in Townsville's tropical paradise.
Well, we were out fishing, having a mad time with the boys, and then we all got a call from our mums.
Packed up all their gear, then came home as fast as we could pretty much.
I've had to leave my car over there because I couldn't get on the car ferry today.
Magnetic Island's small but ageing population is facing its highest risk of the pandemic after a 19-year-old tourist spent 3 days holidaying there while infected with COVID-19.
We have a more vulnerable population that needs to be protected. But on the upside, it's a captive population. We can sort of put people at the ferry wharf there to control the movements in and out and swab as many people as possible.
The Brisbane hospital worker landed at Townsville Airport on Thursday at 12:15. She caught a barge to the island that afternoon, where she spent 3 days at a number of locations, including the IGA and coffee cart at the ferry terminal. She travelled back to Townsville on Sunday, where she visited the Flinders Street markets before flying back to Brisbane just after 1 o'clock. Her brief visit to the city means it too is in lockdown.
Well, I was quite surprised that it was in Townsville, but it's an essential thing for us to do.
Oh, disappointment, but that's reality, isn't it?
I don't understand how someone can come up here and infect us up here when we haven't had a case up here in over 18 months.
We're about 2 kilometres away from Townsville's primary COVID testing site. Traffic is building up and moving slowly. The Hospital and Health Service says it won't have additional testing capacity at this site until tomorrow afternoon. They're asking people to only come for testing if they're experiencing symptoms or have been to an exposure site. With such short notice, many restaurants decided it was easier to close than adapt.
Well, I think a lot of businesses around town were looking forward to these school holidays as a bit of a stimulus for business. So it will hurt us and a lot of the other businesses.
But there's still hope the Townsville show will go ahead this weekend. Chloe Shemicki, ABC News, Townsville.
And the North Queensland exposure sites have caught up some of Australia's Olympic swimming team. A group were in Townsville and on Magnetic Island at the same time as the infected worker. Swimming Australia says they've been separated from the main group and will be tested. All right, let's go live now to the Mayor of Townsville, Jenny Hill. Councillor, thanks for joining us. We now know this health worker has the highly contagious Delta variant and for 10 days was out in the community, including yours. The Premier is furious she wasn't vaccinated. What's your feeling and the feeling of your community?
Good evening, Matt. Yeah, look, everyone here is furious as well. This shouldn't have happened, but it has, and now we've got to try and deal with it. Hopefully the 3-day lockdown will mean that we will be able to contain any spread of the contagion and life will get back to normal early next week.
We're hearing there were long queues at the main testing centre in Townsville. Have you got the infrastructure you need?
We're dependent on Queensland Health. I would love to see more help here in Townsville. The hospital is placing a testing facility specifically on Magnetic Island for all the residents there. So they will be, I believe, a priority in terms of testing. Locally here on the mainland, the queue extended for, I think, 5 or 6 kilometres. Quite frankly, I think we need some more help in terms of testing here on the mainland to support our local community.
All right, thank you. That's Councillor Jenny Hill, the Mayor of Townsville.